Can you get through it?
We still got 4 more. Panicking for nothing. When I asked for changes to the agenda today, you could add the executive session for. I'm sure you'll get a second. Yep. And we vote. Then we go through the agenda. And when we come to the executive session, I read the first one, and then I ask for minutes. You will do it.
That's what they found.
Besides the stuff.
Well, this is, it was right here. Right down here like this. Yeah. Yeah. And then it went under here, down here. So after that happened, we agreed.
Gonna share that, Cheeto?
Here,
Just one, please. Thank you.
because this was all held.
Doggone.
You can't eat just one.
I can if they're in Holly's hand. See how that works? Is more of your Bill committee showing up tonight?
Yeah, he's right there.
Yeah, but more than just him.
He's the one presenting. Just don't.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, I don't know that they.
I'll bet there's more
I
to
don't
it.
know that they knew that it was. Because everything's been confusing.
Don't respond to something. Don't worry about it. Just that-
Okay, so that's what.
But I've got that for a. exhibit up there. Don, are you set? You're all good? You're ready to go, Steve? Do we have anybody waiting to be online? Who? Margie? Margie, Maggie?
Oh, I need my cell phone, don't I? Yeah. Ready?
Awfully quiet.
I'm just waiting. Yes, thank you. Gotta be less than a few seconds left. So it's 6:30.
I thought it said 6:30.
Mine says
6:29.
1829.
Okay, well, we're ready to go now. I call the regular meeting of the Milliken Board of Trustees for June 10th, 2020 to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will acting town clerk please call roll?
Trustee Wakeman. Here. Trustee Smith.
Here.
Trustee Grandquist.
Here.
Trustee Rodriguez.
Here.
Trustee Trailer. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Ehrlich
Here,
and Mayor Austin.
Here. Okay, does anyone have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Mayor, I have an addition. I'd like to add an executive session to the agenda for the purpose of receiving legal advice pursuant to CRS 24-6-402 AB.
Second. 4B, excuse me.
I'm sorry, 4B, excuse me.
Becky got a second. Any other changes? Acting Town Clerk, please call roll.
Trustee Wakeman,
Yes.
trustee Smith,
Yes.
trustee Grandquist,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Yes.
trustee Trailer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Ehrlich,
Yes.
and Mayor Austin.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. Are there any citizens' comments tonight? All right, so we'll move that on to the meeting minutes. Are there any discussion or comments on the meeting minutes of May 27th, 2020? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve the minutes from May 27th, 2020.
Second.
Acting Town Clerk, please call roll.
Trustee Wakeman,
Yes.
trustee Smith,
Yes.
trustee Grandquist,
Yes.
trustee Rodriguez,
Yes.
trustee Trailer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mayor Austin.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. All right, we have a town administrator's report. Administrator Singwall.
Yes, Mayor. We've pretty much opened the town hall. We've queried everyone. Everyone's comfortable with that. So we've released the restrictions. We've also allowed certain of the senior center things to start where they can isolate the older folks and keep them healthy, move one in at a time or whatever, for like pedicures and stuff like that that they need for their maintenance. We worked on that Hillsborough letter, and rather than mailing it, I went and hand delivered that to Margaret Better and spent some time with her on the concerns that Milliken has with the way that they've been treated by the Hillsborough board. And due to the problems that we had trying to just talk at the meeting, we're the largest board member of the Hillsborough, or shareholder at the Hillsborough, and we were basically kept from being able to speak. I brought up several of the issues. We were not afforded a list of the shareholders prior to the annual meeting. We were not afforded an accounting for the last several years with respect to ditch rights, how many shares are delivered, how many are brought in through the head gate, and just a whole number of issues. And we talked pleasantly, and I asked if she had any questions or concerns about the letter. Just let me know, and we'll work it out before I make a formal request. I did tell her that at this point in time, it's pretty much the decision of all the water people that we're going to walk away from the Hillsborough reservoir project, because it's getting too difficult to spend $7 million to fix up something that will benefit them, and they fight us at every turn. So it was kind of that turn of events that we were trying to lay out there. Since that period of time, I've had several ditch owners that have found out about this, and they're very concerned that Milliken would walk away from it because they see that it would be a great benefit for them and it wouldn't cost them anything. They want to talk. So it is kind of, we're walking away, we're leaving the negotiation. We're not a partner, we're not looking at it anymore. And now we're being requested to share information by other people. So it may work out for us in the long run. But that has transpired. We have finalized a rough draft of the pool agreement that Matt has now shared with the 3 entities to transfer the pool to TRPR, the rec district. I did meet with the judge today, Judge Anglin, Randy Anglin, and we have signed and what would the term be, an agreement?
Sure, yes. just
An agreement
to-
for working for the town as judge at a salary level the same, in the same ballpark as what we have been paying. This will need to be ratified by the board at the next meeting. I also found out today that he does have a couple obligations, so we will be looking at additional fill-in judges we have a few court cases that need to get resolved, some hearings of some of the community court issues. And they felt that it was pretty important to go ahead and have those, since we have been postponing and whatnot because of the COVID. So we've made some calls and we have found a fill-in judge for the next meeting, and I believe the next two. So I think we've got that covered. Yes.
Does his obligations extend beyond the next two? Because I did know that he was going to have some transition time, but
Yes.
beyond that, is
No.
his obligations done?
Yeah.
Okay.
What it is they're going back to Missouri for a trip that was
Yeah.
already in the play. So he's going to be picking up some of his stuff out there that he wants to bring out here for this. But it was already in the play, so we've made arrangements to have someone else come in. But that'll be on your next agenda to look at and approve.
Yes, that's right. We'll have an appointment, formal appointment for the next meeting.
And what about the swearing in? Does he need to come in and swear in, or do we swear him in there, or how does that work?
Probably at the board meeting. Let me look into that.
Okay, there is a swearing in of judge, and we'll have to look to see how that works. We have our irrigation water running into Centennial Lake, and if you've been down there and gone past it, Centennial Lake is full. We are at full capacity on our pumping now. And initially, Keith worked with all the landscape companies and had them kind of on a schedule so that we could water while we didn't have water coming in. We've got the water coming in now. So we'll start seeing things greening up in a lot of places. I think some of the HOAs and some of the landscape companies have some issues, but they are not town problems at this point. One of the things that we had talked about and wanted to accomplish was a new court report that gave more information so that you could see the fines and everything. That is in your board packet tonight. One of the things you wanted was the first quarterly report, and we had Wade put the first quarterly budget in on this for your discussion tonight. That's all I have.
Any questions?
Could you share the letter that you sent to the Hillsborough folks with the board?
Sure.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. All right, there is nothing on the consent agenda, so we'll move on to the action agenda. Item number 9A, we've got ordinance number 784, establishing a municipal court as a qualified municipal court of record. Matt Gould, Town Attorney.
Yes, this item was on the agenda at the last meeting, and there were some pieces of information that we decided we wanted to get, so that this item was tabled. What you'll find in your packet is a couple of new items. One is a document that shows the costs, and I believe that's coming out to right around $3,500. The equipment that we're proposing to purchase is listed. So that's in your packet. I think there's also a question and answer exchange between Steve and I on just some follow-up questions that I had about that equipment. And I thought he answered those questions well. So that shows what equipment we're proposing to purchase. There were also some questions about how the surcharge and other court revenue is accounted for. And there's a memo in the packet from me on that. The simple answer is that all of those funds basically go into the town general fund. And then as a separate matter, the court as well as the police department and the jail are budgeted in the general budget. So there's a word in the municipal code that simply says that the money collected is used to defray those costs. So there's really, I think there was maybe a misconception that there's a pot of money that's being reserved for incarceration that comes from the surcharge, and that's really not the case. But we did propose 2 slight modifications to the ordinance to address that. So the ordinance now reads, and this is, you have a red line. This is in section 2-4-140, and I'm going to start with subsection B because that's what we talked about last time. That now reads, the proceeds of the surcharge shall be paid into the general fund of the town to be used to defray the costs of necessary police services, community court programs, and incarceration of municipal offenders, which I think that's maybe a little more accurate, reflecting what actually happens. And then I would also direct the board's attention to the following paragraph, which actually tasks the town attorney with making appropriate efforts to collect the amounts that are attributable and that are spent for a detention and incarceration. And that's existing code. That's been there. The one other change I believe that was made is that during our research, we did a little investigation of surcharges and penalties, and we decided it would be prudent if we made clear that the total of penalties and surcharge cannot exceed the statutory standard. So that's another change that we made. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I think that covers the new information that's been provided.
Thank you. All right, opening for discussion. Any questions, Trustee Grunquist?
No questions.
Trustee Trina?
No questions.
Mayor Pro Tem Ehrlich?
No questions.
Trustee Wakeman?
I have a question on the effective date of this ordinance. When does it actually take effect?
That's a fair question. I believe that it's simply after publication and after the statutory period has run, but let me look. So there's no specific effective date, and therefore this ordinance would take effect essentially after it's published in accordance with statute and the 30-day period passes. I can grab that statute if that would be helpful, but it's essentially a 30-day delay.
I'm perfectly fine with that, but I think that it might be well to have a statement of that effect in the ordinance that says it will take effect 30 days after publication.
Certainly, we can add that. If we want to entertain a motion to approve the ordinance with that change, that would be fine. We can add that.
Thank you.
Trustee Smith?
I have no questions.
Trustee Rodriguez?
I have no questions.
No further discussion. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve ordinance 784 with the changes of the 30-day in effect period after publication.
Second it.
Thank you. Acting Town Clerk, please call roll.
Trustee Wakeman,
Yes.
Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Trustee Granquist,
Yes.
Trustee Rodriguez,
Yes.
Trustee Trailer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mayor Austin.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. Item 9B is resolution number 20-16, allowing electronic participation for quasi-judicial hearings during emergency situations. This again is Matt Gould, Town Attorney.
Yes, this is a resolution that I think was conceived when COVID was having a pretty dramatic impact on our board activities. I think it is still appropriate, but it allows and provides basic procedures for the conduct of quasi-judicial hearings during an emergency disaster declaration. A few of the, and this was kind of at the rough draft stage when we talked about it at the work session, I believe, last time. So just a couple of points that are reflected in this. It requires approval of the applicant and a waiver of liability for any challenge arising from the fact that we are conducting the hearing by way of electronic proceedings. It does allow for publication on the town's website of documents submitted by the applicant in advance, and it sets a deadline of 5 days before the hearing. It also does allow third parties who are viewing and who wish to provide comment to submit documents at the time of the hearing. One of the things we discussed was to try to make this live, so it allows the public to comment and to add materials to the record during the hearing. And those become part of the record. I think those are the key ingredients here. There aren't any special steps created. I don't think really what we're trying to do is make this as close as possible to a quasi-judicial hearing that would be conducted before the board face-to-face.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right, opening up for discussion. Any questions, Trustee Rodriguez?
No questions.
Trustee Smith?
No questions.
Trustee Wakeman?
I just have a question on the public hearings that we've held over the last couple of months. Would we have been in violation of anything on those hearings, or I personally would not feel that we were, but in light of the fact that we're allowing for this now, do you think we had any conflict there?
I don't believe so, because there are quasi-judicial hearings which are fairly distinctive. They're deciding the specific rights of an individual party, and I think we've tracked those as pretty closely. And I don't believe we've had any of those happen. But there are also legislative hearings which are very different. They're not subject to the same due process constraints, and I think that's where our activity has been.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Ehrlich?
I have none.
Trustee Trailer?
No questions.
Trustee Grunquist?
None for me as well.
Okay. Discussion is complete. I will take a motion.
I move that we adopt resolution number 20-16, a resolution of the town of Milliken, Colorado, creating a policy for electronic participation for town board meetings and conducting any quasi-judicial hearings during emergency situations.
Second.
Acting Town Clerk, please call for a vote.
Trustee Wakeman,
Yes.
Trustee Smith,
Yes.
Trustee Gronquist,
Yes.
Trustee Rodriguez,
Yes.
Trustee Trailer,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mayor Austin.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is a presentation that I know I've been waiting for. It is going to be from our Go Mill Committee on the Parks, Trails, and Open Spaces Master Plan Update. Yes,
Ms.
please.
Mayor,
If you could
Brandon Smith will present on this.
please state your name for the record and your address.
Yeah, this is Brandon Smith, and I live at basically in the Settlers Village at 2731 Prairie Ridge Drive.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for having me. As I mentioned, I'm Brandon Smith. I'm here representing the Go Mills Committee. The committee was formed in November-ish timeframe of this year, of 2019. And basically we were formed as part of the 2016 kind of general master plan for the city as a form to help kind of drive the strategy for our parks and our open spaces here in Milliken. So when we sat down as like kind of the very first action item in kind of November timeframe, we really realized that the current master plan from basically 2003 was a shared document between Johnstown and Milliken and was pretty outdated. It hadn't had any revisions. It hadn't had any type of kind of adjustments or modifications. And so when we were kind of deciding, what should be the first action, we decided that we should probably get this updated and modified, because this should be the strategy, right? It should be driving our strategy of how we drive the community and, again, our parks and stuff. So we sat down over the winter, which has been a very long winter, as everyone's probably felt, but basically to redraft out the master plan, we decided to do a Milliken only master plan this time, as opposed to doing a joint one with the Johnstown, since basically the community has gone from like 2,000 or 3,000 people to, I think the estimate is like 7,000 now. So I think it's time, we're big enough to kind of start our own master plan. So we built it out, drafted out the design, and kind of really tried to scope out what is the future and what does the future hold for, our parks and our, the connectivity of our area. So in order to build out this master plan, what we did was we pulled together basically feedback from our local communities, like the neighboring communities, TRPR, City of Evans. And we also pulled in community feedback. We had about 115, 120 individuals put on a survey from the community. We had it open for 2 months to try to drive, feedback on, how are our current parks? What would you like to see? What are your favorite types of parks to go visit? And we try to aggregate all that information into one kind of general document that can kind of help to drive, again, that future strategy for the town. So there's kind of the document itself. I'm assuming everyone got it in the packet, right? Okay. So I hope you've had an opportunity to read, at least go through it quickly. But part of it, the document kind of just talks about, the history of the community, pulling from like the history, the foundation here that has the historical references, also pulling in surveys and information, some really interesting facts, which some of you might not know, is there's actually a mammoth site here where they pulled out like 7 or 9 different mammoths, and you can actually find one of the mammoths in the Denver Museum, which is pretty cool. But basically there's a lot of pretty interesting information in there regarding, the soil types and just like the general, how our parks go. We also built out the entire inventory of parks. We included both HOA and Town of Milliken because we felt like it's a good idea to at least give one document that shows everything that's current. And as we expand, we can always update, hopefully with the future master plans. And then on top of that, we've added the recommendations. We tried to keep it realistic, and we kept down to 6 recommendations, all of which have a significant breadth, and all of which will need to be addressed again, in the future. Like these are not standard, like, we set in stone and, walk away. These would be things that we should hopefully address, every couple of years and revamp. But they were really focused on trying to either standardize our parks. So the first recommendation is just standardize, pulling together the standards with the Planning Commission, with the Landscape Commission, try to figure out a way that we can build out a simpler way to, again, standardize or make sure that all the parks are meeting a certain, size of path, or meeting a certain, this amount should be xeriscape, those type of accessibility items too, to kind of drive, either the future parks or even just upgrades the current ones. Kind of a second item, which was kind of focused on, and my computer just went to sleep, but which was focused more on just kind of driving the standardization of our signage and our websites. So currently, if you go look up for a park map, you can't actually find one, or it might be super outdated. So we're trying to drive, through the committee, and then again with like the administrator's help, and town resources, try to see if we can build out a parks map, build out trail maps, build out signage for our trails that can reference, here's how many miles there are on the trails. Here's, this is the location of our parks. So kind of driving out, some more standardization where when you go to a park, you immediately know I'm in Milliken Parks and these are the best parks ever. The third item was kind of focusing on safety. So we're trying to drive, we actually had community members come in to meet with us, and they addressed a concern where there's individuals who get, weather happens all the time, right? Hailstorms, rainstorms just pop up like that. And if there's kids out in the park, there's no current shelters, no current protection in a number of the parks. And so we wanted to address if there's a way we can drive, and this would be kind of one of the objectives over like a 2 to 3 year period, drive something that might be as a collaboration with like the schools to build like maybe bus stops near the area that could be protection that they could run a shelter in, or if there's certain type of pavilions that we can drive. Again, it's all about the community in mind, right? How can we protect them in case there's a concern or there's an issue. And then basically from there, we also have recommendations where we kind of jump into breaking down, here's our current parks, and what recommendations we have pulled from the community feedback and from actually our collaboration again with the local cities, and some improvement ideas that we can drive. So super simple items that can include, building park benches or installing, shelters here and there, or making more accessible playgrounds where we can, trying to pull in grants and try to pull in various different fund sources to help drive that. And then also, and I kind of got them out of order. I apologize that it's changed on me a few times. There's also a drive for getting community involvement more. So one of the recommendations is to drive more community involvement through volunteer projects, driving, trash cleanup projects, drive just general, how can we get the community out and take ownership of these parks? Because the only way we can improve them and make them better is if the community can help lend a hand. And that could be anything from, whenever we're setting up, one of the recommendations is we need to add some trees around some of the trails. Okay, well, when we do that, let's get the community involved. Can they come out and help us and dig the holes and help us plant the trees? And then can we get a couple individuals who are willing to come out for the first couple of weeks and help water, right? And so those are items that we want to drive as kind of, again, as one of the other recommendations in it. And then the final recommendation is the long-term, some parks, the future parks and the future park development. Obviously, that is very much a planning and board decision on whether there is going to be land acquisition in the future, and whether or not the parks, we could make them into parks or make them into properties to use. But that would be something to drive, would be, there are some different ideas of how we could add, something like a bike park. Since the skate park is so popular, is there maybe a bike park, or could we build a park that is more focused on the educational purposes? Is there a park that we could build along the river, like a trail system that can give individuals much needed escape, especially during times like this? So that's kind of the overview, and I apologize for I talk really fast, but I guess at this time, if there's any questions or comments.
I would certainly be willing to donate a tree, to plant a shade tree in one of the parks. And I think there's a lot of citizens in town, if we solicit, would be willing to do the same, because your plan here is very well laid out. And I see there's a lot of plant trees, which I think is a great idea. So it's a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
So there was one thing we discussed after this was presented to Tim, and that's the Sappington Park, because there was a purpose for that park and it hasn't been done yet. I don't know if anybody's looked at the sign, but it's dedicated to a farmer that was here, and they have all the plans mapped out on the sign, and it just has never happened. So I think, were you part of that discussion too?
Yeah, at the very end, but we had already gotten the draft out, so yeah.
That's what happened. So that was just a little thing I wanted to add.
I think one of the things for parks, like you're talking about, maybe a little bit there is this historic value of different things to promote that wherever we can.
And we were wondering, is there some sort of, I don't know, plan that was for Sappington Park filed away somewhere?
I haven't come across one that I've seen, but I've got a few more filed I haven't been through.
There was a plan for all the parks to be themed. Centennial was the jungle theme. If you look at the playground equipment, it's kind of got that look to it. So there was an entire plan laid out for all the parks. So I think we should probably dig that up for you guys. Take a look at it if you didn't see it.
I did not run across that. No,
Okay.
I've seen a lot of master plans.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about 35 of them that I read through. So
Okay. So did you have a park in mind to start with, or a trail to start with, or something in particular
yeah,
that I don't really see?
yeah. So we kind of left it really general in the master plan, just because we don't want basically to jump in and say, you know, hey, this is what we're going to do, and then, you know, this situation where like COVID, you can't actually go out and do it. So we kind of outlined and some of the ideas. One of the big ones was we have this property just down the street that is right next to the liquor store, and the concept would be building a community garden there. However, the concept, if Sappington is also would be a community garden, or that was how it's scoped out, that could also be an opportunity as a quick kind of win, right? A quick kind of project we could build into. So, and then other than that, the other of the recommendations, some of the documentation portions and the maps, like the actual park map, were kind of the top of mind by, the next couple of months. How can we drive and get those done? And then, kind of go from there.
Anybody else have questions?
I certainly like the Martin Park community garden idea. Get a new well in there so that we can get the non-pot water down to the end of the sign park at the beginning of the town.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all do, but the well is the challenge, as we found.
Also, I just wanted to add, we have a committee member. She's president. Well, she's the vice president, actually, that is very passionate about bringing in ADA equipment, because there's really nowhere around here that has it.
Yeah, that was one thing that we've been discussing back and forth. Was there are a significant number of grants out there, and we've found a few of the parks currently that have no equipment whatsoever, or have no structures in them, so they'd be prime candidates. I think West Forest was one of them that we could look into integrating.
This is Mayor. Oh, yes.
One more thing. There was a park that we went to before we moved here that was a music park, and it had a bunch of non-obnoxious music instruments. Not big bongo drums and stuff, but it had like, little wooden, and that, it was geared towards special needs people on top of just general music understanding and knowledge. And there's different sizes of things and different lengths of pieces of wood and different things that you could hit. But the whole park was just, there was a bridge, and all the little slats on the bridge were different notes, and it was a bunch of things like that. But it was just a musically themed park, and a lot of activities that were musically oriented. So
kind of focus on that. I wonder if there's a corner of Centennial or something, get away from the middle of the city or the neighborhood, but maybe there could be a possibility there.
Not next to somebody's house, probably. But
yeah. I mean, we could put it right. I mean, there actually is there's some, I think you can hit a couple of little bells over
And
here.
the little police cop.
Oh, yeah,
cops
there
and
too,
kids
yes.
is actually
put it right
musical.
here in front of Penny's.
We do have a musical theme in the Heritage House
Yeah.
area.
Any other questions?
Ms. Mayor,
Good
what
job.
we're looking at is making this our new master plan and have it as a living document as the Parks Advisory Board. They do have a budget. As they come up with ideas on projects or whatever, bring those in for approval. This is our guideline to start working on that. If there's any direction that you would like to convey to the Parks Advisory Board on areas that you think should be addressed first, the budget's small, but would you like to direct, or would you like them to bring a couple ideas to you at one of the next meetings to get going on a couple of projects?
I think we'd like to hear, because they've been out and visited, they've seen whatever. I think the better thing is to have them present to us recommendations rather than us driving, because most of us live in different subdivisions. So I'm sure that we all want something done in our own. But I think they're in a better
Right.
position to prioritize. The only thing I'm going to say, the biggest complaint, I live in Colony Point, that playground equipment over there, wasps love it. They
Oh, yeah.
love it. And the town was nice enough to get rid of the wall that the wasps love. So that's one thing down. But I know that's for sure.
I don't think this made it in board packet, but this was their community survey that they did. Did this get in the packet?
No.
So they do have a lot of information and public direction. Your park does have some playground equipment up there. We've got playgrounds in town that don't have playgrounds in them.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that we've been
I just
talking about, trying to make sure that we have guidelines for what a park is.
Absolutely. And I see the kids, because it's a fishing over there a lot because of Lake Erlich. A lot of the kids like the shade structure, picnic bench type thing. They're not really that interested in the playground equipment other than staying away from it because of the wasps.
Right. Well, and as we've seen now in the last couple of months, I mean, we couldn't even use the playground equipment, right? So there's, and yes, me, so there's definitely more emphasis, and that's kind of with the document, we are trying to focus on those items that would be more of the shared community first, and then, we can build that playground equipment as we get clearer and clearer from all this stuff.
I like it. And like I said, I'm not kidding. I will buy a tree.
Hey,
So we can dedicate it.
we got that on.
Okay.
We're going to dedicate it. Okay. I got you.
To whatever park it needs to go. in.
Awesome.
What is it, $500 a tree?
I was thinking 2,000, but I didn't you. It's not that much. Yeah.
It's a big tree.
There's a sale down there at the State Farm every year.
Oh, the ones that have dried out.
I'd like to buy something substantial. I'm not buying a twig. So.
All right.
Cool. Any other questions or anything else I can address?
Thanks for all your work, and please convey that to your committee too. This was wonderful,
Yeah.
how much effort you guys have put into it.
Well, Brandon did most of the work, and he was exemplary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
man.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, the next item on the board's agenda is an executive session pursuant to section 24-6-4024B of the Colorado Revised Statutes for the purpose of receiving legal advice from the town attorney on specific legal questions related to an anonymous letter received by the town. So at this time, we will pause so that people can pick up their items, and then we will go into an emergency.
If anybody sees a couple wedding bands, then come help them off.
Just tonight?
Tonight, yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Oh my gosh, you guys.
What are you missing?
Her wedding
They're
bands.
wedding bands. They were loose.
And